Thanks for being here. As usual, we're going to start with a quick update on energy tax credits. And I added on clean energy grants because the first piece we're going to start with is actually not tax credits narrowly, but we want to start with an update on the electric school bus initiative. And I saw Carolina on here. So I'm going to immediately turn it over to her to give an update on electric school bus land, where we used to have tax credits, have them kind of no more. And grants are, I don't know. Carolina, tell us.
Yes, thanks so much, Sarah. So for those of you that don't know me, I'm Carolina. I'm the coalition manager for the Alliance for Electric School Buses. So we have been tracking federal programs on electric school buses very, very closely. The good news is that EPA has announced that the Clean School Bus program is not dead, and they will issue around four grants opportunity later this year. The mixed or more bad news is that it will include additional funding for fossil fuel buses. To inform this next grant opportunity, EPA has published a request for information that I'll drop in the chat, where they are looking for additional information on some of these alternative fuels, how they operate, what their availability, their demand, their pricing, etc. The RFI also importantly also goes into or asks questions about program oversight and fraud prevention. So they are looking to increase reporting requirements and essentially change compliance guidelines for future grantees. Additionally, EPA is also asking about procurement practices and supply chain issues for zero emission school buses as well. So, if any of you have any sort of expertise in these topics, definitely would recommend that you respond to this RFI and help provide or share that expertise. If you are interested in sharing your support for electric school buses and that they should continue to be part of the program, please let me know. We're happy to help you draft comments to that effect. Comments are due April 6th through the Federal Register. We also have a summary of what is included in the RFI, so I'll share that here. And then additionally, of course, EPA couldn't make this announcement without trying to attack electric school buses and the program itself because it was created under the prior administration. So we've published a blog trying to correct some of the record of what Administrator Zeldin has said. And so would be happy if folks could share that, disseminate it, and again, just try to respond to some of the attacks that were made of the program and also electric school buses. We're going to be working with WRI and other partners to try to encourage comments, again, that demonstrate demand and interest in electric school buses from school districts and other partners, as well as advocacy groups that are a member of our coalition. And again, we'd be happy to work with any of you that might be interested in doing the same. Just to reiterate, those comments are due April 6th, and they can be submitted online. And if you have any other questions on the RFI, I'm happy to answer them. One final note that I'll make is that EPA is required by law to award at least 50% of the funds each fiscal year to zero emission buses, of which right now on the market, the only option is electric school buses. There are no hydrogen buses in the school bus market. And so we are confident that that will continue. We are seeing positive signs that at least EPA isn't killing the program, but of course we will continue to fight to make sure that funding is preserved for school districts seeking electric school buses. So yeah, happy to answer any questions if anyone has them. And if you would like to draft comments, please just let me know. Or if you know someone who you think might be interested in drafting comments, we're also happy to connect with them. Thanks.
Thank you. Awesome, awesome. Any questions for Carolina on that? Okay. Moving on, for those of you that follow energy tax credits, PFE would have been an acronym familiar to you, but for those of you who don't, I spelled it out, prohibited foreign entity. These are the new set of rules that Congress imposed on solar energy storage projects in the context of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. These make it more difficult for schools to obtain these tax credits while they are still available. And again, the Congress also shortened the time period over which those tax credits for solar and energy storage are available. Congress, we're waiting on Treasury to release additional guidance to help us flesh out the very short statutory text around these new rules. We don't know everything that we need to know to help guide school districts through compliance with these new rules. They did just recently issue some guidance on some of the rules having to do with where our solar panels come from, who makes our solar panels. That's one part of a three-part test. So we have a little bit more guidance that's useful for developers in particular, but we are still lacking critical guidance on how school districts will navigate the other two tests, and in particular one that implicates who holds their municipal bonds. So there's still a lot of ambiguity for school districts that are seeking to access this tax credit for solar or for energy storage. And we still don't have the information we need to help guide those folks through a compliance regimen. So if you're advocating for solar projects or your, school districts or school districts that are doing solar projects that are not yet placed in service, that are still kind of in process, you can check out the updates on our solar and storage page, and we'll continue to update that page as additional guidance becomes available. Um, like in the case of electric school buses, the Treasury is seeking comments on some of these rules, and so if you're interested to hear more about that, we're not totally clear on our approach there, but happy to talk more about that for those of you that are interested. I did a very cursory because we're not going to get into that. We talked a lot about that last time, but any quick questions on that very cursory heads up on the nasty rules for solar and energy storage? Okay. Um, Ending this little section on a high note, important to report that we are still seeing school districts receive checks from the Treasury Department for installing eligible equipment. So for the tax credits that are still intact, for the projects that, we're still working their way through the system, we are still hearing about folks getting checks. This is a very duct tape and bubblegum process to learn about school districts that get checks. We find out about it because we talk to people. You all talk to people. So it would be great if, as you are moving through the world, if you are, talking with school districts that are doing clean energy projects, ask them if they got a check from the IRS. Tell us about it. We will add it to our running blog post where we just have check after check after check of school districts across the country for electric school buses, for solar, for ground source heat pumps, for all sorts of good stuff. This is a important asset and great stories to be able to tell. So you can always go to our map and see what projects we're tracking, and help us keep those up to date by talking to folks that and letting us know when folks get a check. Questions on that?
Sarah, just to build on your thought and appreciate
Yeah.
everyone that is sharing with us when you hear about a check. Like one of the big questions from school district leaders in the initial conversation is always, wait, we're a public sector entity. We don't pay taxes. What is this? And this page that shows that districts all over the country are getting checks and or are still getting checks in the current context is one of our best collective assets for overcoming, the ambiguity that they are continue to experience around the tax credit. So just an appreciation for everyone for helping us to kind of keep this current, not just checks from last fall, but checks from, this year. Like it matters that they're recent and it shows that, things are still working.
Things are still working. Okay. Hopefully I've piqued your interest and you will help us add more great districts to this list. And with that, 1 minute ahead of schedule, I think I'm turning it over to Riley, to talk HVAC Change Lab. Riley, Craig, who wants to go first?
I think Craig's going to kick it off, and I will add the flavor and the color, of course.
Of course, right. Of course. Craig, over to you.
Yeah, hi everyone. We're going to start a really high level of what the new initiative is that we launched, and then Riley's going to go a little bit deeper, as she just said, and we can answer any questions you'll have. Essentially, we launched 2 weeks ago, put a press release out, something we're calling the HVAC Change Lab. And there's two parts to this initiative. One is an impact network. So organizing a bunch of NGOs, including some of the folks here on this line, all around HVAC and technical expertise around HVAC, and applying that towards real projects in school districts. So improving school district projects. So the Change Lab is really just taking a magnifying glass to the brilliance of all the NGOs in this space and focusing it on tangible projects. So we're going to be working with 12 to 15 school districts, all that have HVAC replacement or modernization projects this year or next year. And Riley will talk about what we'll do to help them, but we're going to be for the next year working with them essentially in kind of a turnkey owner's rep process. So that's the big theme, organizing a lot of technical experts around HVAC, applying that knowledge and that technical expertise and volunteerism towards real world projects. And the process that we're going to do to over the summer to help these districts, Riley, is
That's my cue. Okay, cool. I might add too, obviously we've all seen federal disinvestment, both financially and sort of emotionally over the last year or so in the support for schools. And this is helping to also fill a gap that was being filled in some level by some federal programs like Efficient Healthy Schools and the Energy Class Prize and even Renew America Schools. We don't have money like Renew. We don't want to get too excited yet. Um, but because a lot of the technical assistance for schools has sort of been pulled away, this is a great opportunity for us to start to fill that gap in a different way. Craig mentioned the impact network with all of our partners that are involved. So we have school districts and impact network partners. And it's really a great way for school districts to go to one place to find help. Because, I mean, we all know we want to reach out to schools for help. Schools are always looking for different ways to help. So it's a really nice way for schools to have sort of one place to go. And we're piloting that approach with the 12 to 15 school districts that we're working with. Ideally, this will grow and become a much larger thing. But this year we're piloting around HVAC because we know that HVAC is a many tentacled animal and in itself is a huge topic. So we have I just put the link in the chat. So this will look kind of like many of you have probably seen us do with Energy Class or some of the convenings that Center for Green Schools puts together where throughout the next year, we will meet with school districts in the peer-to-peer technical assistance cohort is what we've sort of been calling it, where school districts will get to talk to each other. And these folks are from all over. We've got East Coast, West Coast, Midwest, and they're all in different places, but ideally or eventually are moving towards this greater HVAC implementation. We have one school district that just had a board vote to release funds to start their project. And then we have some folks that are a little bit a few months away from that. So school districts will meet in their peer TA cohorts. They will also get their specific technical assistance either from us, from Center for Green Schools, or our Impact Network partners. A great example, because I'm staring at Sarah, is we might talk to a school district. In fact, the one that just passed the money for I can't remember if they're going ground source or geothermal, but then once we get the system in place, Andante comes in and says, here's how we get you your money. So that's one aspect of this work is really helping and using all of our partners to provide this assistance to school districts over the next year. And then we'll celebrate. We also know that HVAC goes on more than a year, so we're not just going to be bye in March or February. This is an ongoing relationship as well. Okay, I could keep talking, so I'm going to cut it.
Well, to summarize, what we'll be doing with the school districts is providing technical assistance, both as the organizations that are dedicating staff to this and the Impact Network. We'll be facilitating communities of practice amongst the school districts to talk to each other. We're going to be doing a resource map of all the HVAC related resources that are out there. We're going to be creating a couple new assets, new resources this summer to fill the gaps of those of what's not out there. And then with Nixie, we'll be documenting and putting all of this into one place, as Riley said, so there's one place to go for school districts. So kind of a turnkey comprehensive process. This is a pilot. We've heard from the school districts that this process is really helpful. Every school district we've talked to has wanted to participate. We're hope that this summer goes really well with us meeting their needs, and we'll update you as we keep moving forward.
Great, Riley, is there anything you want from or could use from this group explicitly?
I put one thing in the chat. If you have HVAC related
Right.
resources, and think expansively too. Think building automation systems and all the stuff that plays into that many tentacled animal. Please share those with us. We can put our emails in the chat too. That's the one that comes to mind. I think tapping in, signing up on the website, you can sign up to stay involved. We're still starting to figure out how to as Craig said, this is a pilot, right? Still trying to figure out how to bring in this greater world of all of these people, like all y'all on this call, to help districts and to move this into a greater thing. So staying tapped in so that we can really make sure that we bring you along, I think is really helpful
Yeah.
as we figure out that process.
I agreed. That's the number one thing right now. We are still building this ship as it's leaving the dock right now. Keeping updated with what we're doing. We will be putting out surveys, call for resources, etc., through our newsletter that will be attached to your email when you sign up. So that's right now is the ask, Sarah, is just sign up, participate as you can in the near future. And if you have any questions or want to participate more, let us know.
Great. Thank you all for leading the charge. It looks like we have a question or maybe a comment from Ted.
Yeah, I just put this in the chat, but the Energy Commission and both the IOU codes and standards teams in California are looking at the package rooftop replacement policies and that trying to set that for new construction, but also retrofits on the next set of standards. But they found it cost effective for offices and small retail, which should apply for schools too. But that has to be adopted by DSA in California or the school district. So it starts to be a little bit of a challenge, but there's a lot of people looking at that one on the cost effectiveness, and they found the cost and replacements are similar. So, Craig, that data is out there. Happy to talk to you more when you dig into it.
Yeah, thank you.
Ted, I'm curious to talk to you maybe offline about that because separately from this, we're doing a bunch of work with SDG&E and SCE and their Reach Codes team, trying to pull some schools data to sort of, I think, verify this type of work. So maybe if you want to drop your email in the chat, we should talk
Yeah,
offline.
that was actually paid for and developed by Southern California Edison and
I
San Diego
figured.
Gas and Electric and the IU Codes and Standards team. So it's not directly related to schools, but we should ask them to do that work.
Second question, Chelsea. No, please don't send a school district our way, but please send us information to the school district. We are kind of full right now. If a school district drops out or if we're able to fit them in, we would love to reach out to them. The conditions we have right now is to make this successful is we really want to make sure school districts have HVAC modernization set this year or next year, funding included. Right. So if you have someone in mind, can you share the information with us? I'll put my email in the chat.
There's also like if they need HVAC help, we're not gonna turn them away. Like I've got a couple of districts not in the Change Lab that we're still doing some TA for separately. It's a little more bounded, but like, we're
Yeah.
always here, Chelsea.
One of the goals for this year is to make a positive feedback loop where when we're working with these schools, we'll be able to identify the common problems. We'll be able to put the resources that do exist towards those problems. We'll have common solutions to those problems, and then we'll be filling in the gaps. So the more we do this, the better we will be doing, better we'll be able to support school districts. So yeah, so Chelsea, send us the school information. If nothing, we'll ask them to sign up to stay up to date, because if we do this again, love to have more.
And I think also, Craig, building on your thought, one of the things that I was most compelled by as I saw you guys starting to roll this out to districts was sort of the framework about all the points in a project where something goes wrong, whether it's pre-planning or procurement, construction, handing off to operations, these different considerations that, moments in a project process where there are choke points or best practices. And so I think as folks are thinking about like plugging in to support this project, if you have insights or tools that relate to any of those moments in a project's process, I think those are, serving those up. This is a moment to kind of spread them across the country through the Change Lab.
Yeah. Thanks, Jonathan.
Great. Cool. Should we continue on with the theme of HVAC? I guess you have no choice. We're continuing with the theme of HVAC. Okay, so thanks for spending some time with us on the national campaign that we are running on modern HVAC. We thought we'd share with this community our thinking on the context for this work, how we kind of frame this work, both when we're talking with folks that are on the climate side and also when we're talking with folks on the education side. Some of you may swim in one set of waters more than the others, and we thought it'd be helpful to give kind of a very high level frame to the work that we're doing to help schools increase their adoption of ground source heat pumps. Many of you have seen our work or heard some of our work in that area, so it's not a shock to you, but we thought we'd just kind of step back and do some high level contextualizing. So that's what we're going to do for a bit of time today. Heavy on context. Oh, come on, slides. Okay. So big picture here, stepping back to, climate challenge, emissions challenge, buildings, the headline here that many of us know and live and breathe all the time, the motivation for Ted's work at Building Decarbonization Coalition. Buildings are polluters, right? Big polluters, responsible for something like 40% of the world's greenhouse gas emissions. Different people slice this up different ways, but that's a big headline. And so when we think about tackling that challenge, our International Energy Agency says, quote from them, heat pump potential needs to be unleashed. This technology, this heat pump technology, is one of the primary solutions that we need to deploy in all of our buildings, our homes, our churches, our supermarkets, our businesses, and yes, of course, our schools. Anywhere where we're heating in particular, we need to be moving to this class of solution. To step back, when we did our work with RMI several years ago, our HVAC choices for student health and learning, we kind of set up this framework of there's legacy machines that help us heat and cool our buildings, and then there's modern machines. And legacy machines are these, pretty inefficient machines that generally burn fossil fuels to heat our buildings, and they often don't also provide cooling. So a steam system, a hot water system, maybe best case 96% efficient, and combustion. Those flames you're seeing. Those are all kind of legacy technologies. The vast majority of schools still use these technologies, and the shift we're trying to drive in all of our school buildings is towards these modern piece of equipment, these heat pumps generally as a class, with air source and ground source or geothermal being two in that class. Much more efficient because they do a smart thing, moving heat versus making heat. Many of you have heard me give this spiel before, and they're much more efficient. So if you look at those efficiency numbers, ground source heat pumps, 300 to 700% efficient because we use a little bit of electricity to move heat or thermal energy that always exists under our feet, that constant 55 degrees that's under our feet even now. So this is this framework that we've kind of set up. So when we think about getting these heat pumps into these buildings, and meeting climate targets, again, the IEA has set out a set of milestones. In order to hit, our climate targets, are kind of the Paris Climate Accords, these like large commitments that we and other countries have made. They set out a set of milestones for buildings. And so we can think about how are our schools doing against these targets? They said by 2025, we need to have no new sales of fossil gas boilers. Fortunately, that's not happening. We are still installing new fossil gas boilers. By 2030, we need to have all of our new buildings, every new building we build has to be all electric, it has to be ready for some solar and be zero carbon ready. I don't think we're on a path to do that. I'm pretty sure we're not on a path to make all new buildings zero carbon ready by 2030. And then by 2040, we'd have to retrofit at 50% of our existing buildings with these heat pump solutions. So these are like the decade by decade milestones that we would need to hit to have a hope of meeting some of these climate targets. And the converse, every time we don't take advantage of one of these HVAC replacement opportunities, and we install a new fossil fuel driven piece of equipment, we are locking in emissions for 20, 30. How long do schools run HVAC systems? Sometimes 50 years. So we are locking in those emissions and creating potentially stranded assets for schools, assets that they can no longer afford to operate, either because the cost of those fuels are so high or because the compliance burdens around continuing to emit carbon are so high. So this is every time we miss a chance here, I cry a little tear every time we miss one of these opportunities to disrupt this. So okay, so we're going to zero in on one of those machines, the ground source heat pump machine, also called geothermal. Again, it uses that constant temperature underneath the ground. We move that thermal energy up Or in the case of this picture in summertime, this is Baltimore City schools where they have a ground source heat pump. They are rejecting heat down into the ground during the summer to cool their buildings. You might also hear it called geothermal. You've already heard me say both things. Ground source heat pumps, geothermal heat pumps, same thing. What is different, and don't get confused because there's a lot of buzz around it, right, is geothermal energy production. That's a power plant, right? So that is a different thing. And then in the winter, right, we move that heat from below our feet into the buildings. When we can completely replace all of our other HVAC equipment and use ground source heat pumps to heat and cool buildings, even in very cold climates. We can completely, have us on a path to completely eliminating on-site combustion of fossil fuels. So that's a really cool thing. These technologies can be installed in urban areas, in rural areas. They're installing them in the basement of inhabited Manhattan skyscrapers. So like this can be done everywhere. Of course, there's a cost, but it can be done anywhere. We have Robert Ed on from Darcy Solutions. They have a solution which is really good for tight urban sites. So it can be incorporated into new construction and retrofits. So a little bit of 101 on this technology. And when we think about the moment that we're in right now, data centers, energy demand, energy affordability, these are, top build kind of topics right now. This technology is built for this moment because it can radically reduce our energy consumption coming from buildings, even when we're using them for cooling also. So this study from Oak Ridge National Laboratory and the artist formerly known as NREL, now known as NROC, did the study. If we install geothermal in 68% of existing building space, we would save gobs and gobs of electricity consumption, radically reducing it. And along the way, we would reduce emissions immensely, especially in those northern climates, especially where we're burning a lot of heating oil, fossil gas, those type of contributors to emissions. So this is a very powerful climate solution when it comes to our buildings. And one of the reasons why, the work that we're all doing together around getting this technology in schools is so powerful, even beyond the kind of ring fence of our school space, is because another report from Oak Ridge, these folks identified that the most important driver of getting this technology into more places, into our churches and our supermarkets and all those places, is public awareness and trust in this technology. It's not that we need a better mousetrap, it's that we need everyone to know about the mousetrap that we have, right? What better way to do that than to have these machines in our schools and for us all to be talking about, right? That can play a huge role, we think, in driving public awareness of this technology that is so critical and public trust this technology works. It can keep our kids safe, warm in the winter, cool in the summer. Let me stop there for a quick second before I switch over to education framing. I can't see hands, so just come off mute if you have a quick clarifying question. Gonna keep going. Okay, so switching over to schools land, right? As Riley and Craig were just talking about, we know that school HVAC systems desperately need investment. They are costly to operate. They overwhelmingly burn fossil fuels. They're responsible for a big chunk of energy usage, typically over half. This is a national average. In some places, it'll be even more. In some places, it'll be even less in the country, depending on climate. We know from all of our lived experience, and if you needed a geo report to tell you, a third of districts need to replace HVAC systems. So these systems are hugely need a replacement. And luckily, we have a policy as of 2022 to help drive investment in this machine that we just talked about that is a critical climate solution and can help address the need for investment in school HVAC systems. So, I think most people on this call at least have got this update, although, the broader community has not. These tax credits for ground source heat pumps are still available. One Big Beautiful Bill Act did nothing to reduce our access. It didn't shorten the timeline, didn't put any new rules. None of those prohibit and forward any rules that we were talking about for a quick sec earlier apply. and schools are still getting these checks up to 50% off. Start projects by the end of 2034. So we have a runway to make use of federal dollars to make these investments. We're tracking something like 200 projects right now, just little old us. I'm guessing we're covering maybe a third, a half of what's actually happening in the world. Maybe that's even generous. The average reimbursement is about $2 million, $2.5 million. So we're already tracking about $500 million worth of federal investment in new school HVAC systems. That's happening under the radar by and large, right? And just think about if we could drive that investment, further, faster over these coming years. And one of the reasons why this is happening is because of economics. It's, not because of climate, frankly, but it's because we're among many running around trying to help deliver the price signal that this tax credit represents into the marketplace, showing that when you incorporate the tax credit, very often in both new construction and in renovations, the ground source heat pump machine can be the lowest first cost machine to install, beating out those legacy systems, those code minimum gas boilers that many folks will just reflexively put into a school building project. That's the chart on the left. And then the chart on the right, this is the old news, but it still holds true, is that most efficient machine is going to save us the most money in terms of operating it and maintaining it. And only so much more true now as we see spikes in oil prices and natural gas prices, which will to some degree roll through to electricity prices, but dampen places where our utilities have started to diversify. So a really strong economic case, but one that regularly needs to be delivered for the decision making to kind of absorb this price signal. So why are we seeing the leading districts adopt this technology? As I was talking about costs, the cost to install being reduced and the amount they're spending right now on utilities, and seeing that go up with inflation, electricity cost, data centers, and all the rest. Cooling. We've talked about this before on this call. Schools built without cooling, desperately in need of adding cooling. This is a 2-for-1 machine that heats and cools these buildings. And so in many cases, they're kind of getting cooling for free, but this is a problem that school district leaders are already trying to solve. And then in some cases, right, districts are motivated by their climate goals and their climate commitments, and these machines certainly fit into those commitments and goals and policies. So one of these C's can make the job happen. It doesn't certainly have to be all of them, but all of these things can be motivations for districts to do that. Okay, so looking at time and quickly, switching to our campaign a little bit. That's like the context for our campaign, but just switching to our work and just some of the thinking behind it. One, you've probably seen us use this modern HVAC language. Ground source heat pumps are pretty wonky, Don't even know if I know what those are, so I don't know if I want them. Modern HVAC, if I know what HVAC is coming out of COVID, modern sounds good. I think I'm interested to learn more about those. So we tend to use modern HVAC to bring people to the table. We talk about this in terms of the problems that K-12 leaders already have. We don't go around telling school districts they need to decarbonize. We're there for that conversation if they want to have it, but we are trying to help them address issues of cost, operating cost, and issues of, gosh, my parents want cooling, my teachers want cooling, my students deserve cooling, all of the above. So trying to solve leader problems that K-12 leaders already have without giving them a new one. We have seen and really continue to believe that leaders will be motivated by the financial case if, and this is a huge if they know about the tax credit and if they are supported to integrate it into decision making. So if I could clone our team and have us at every table of this hyper-local decision-making, when people are making decisions about new HVAC systems, I would. And I think our batting average would be really, really high, because every time we have a chance to deliver this message and help them integrate the policy, almost always it leads to change. Seeing is believing, to Robert's point in the chat earlier, like us putting those checks up there, us helping, and you all helping us lift up examples of school districts installing this technology, having good experience with it, getting a check, is really, really influential, especially within local ecosystems. Michigan districts want to hear from Michigan districts, of course. And then states can play a really powerful role in awareness building, providing supportive policy and funding. But this policy functions perfectly well without them, but they are a huge source of leverage where we can get it. We have successfully got that leverage in a state like Massachusetts. We are trying and will try to replicate in other states. So we're open to your thoughts about where that can happen. How we're going about doing this work, a lot of awareness building. This is Sarah Heine up at a conference in Wisconsin. We've basically done this 70 times, rooms like this, talking about these tax credits. Technical assistance and tools, you all have seen our hub, and we will continue to update that with more resources, storytelling all the time. Look at your peers, keep up with the Joneses. You can do it too. And then state policy alignment where it's possible to unlock more dollars for school infrastructure projects, more dollars for school HVAC projects, and therefore the ability to unlock more of these federal co-investing dollars. These make great stories. Throw them in a newsletter. Find one in a state near you that you're talking about. And this is where we have stuff going on, kind of, sort of. This is where we have assets, particularly strong assets or storytellers. This is where we have focus on working with in-state partners. Ask me to talk about any one of these states, but threw some gold stars out there. And not to say there won't be more as we hear from you all about where this work would be particularly high impact. So I think I should stop there and we should move over to some conversation about opportunities to partner, any questions, but we are and have already, as Jonathan said, been working with many of you so gratefully on raising awareness within your networks, getting resources out there, identifying state leaders, supporting advocates. Chelsea, looking at you. How else we can support? What can we do? We've certainly got a full plate and we want to hear from you all. So let me stop there.
Thanks so much, Sarah. So maybe starting with any, kind of just general reactions or questions for Sarah, either about what Undaunted is doing or how we're thinking about what we're doing.
Well, since no one's jumping in, I'll jump in and just say I think that's really good framing, and I like the language a lot. I mean, obviously you led to the choir here with the climate driven and the sort of, anti-fossil fuel, however the words you were using, but but then you got to the cost issues, and I think that you all know very well that, local districts are really driven by the cost savings. And that speaks across the political spectrum, thankfully. But anyway, I mean, I like it. I think it's really good. I think it's really complementary to the HVAC Change Lab work that Nixie and you all are involved in. So, if there's opportunities to leverage Nixie, the National Center on School Infrastructure, to do some sort of, Riley and Craig as well. It's like, if there's some way to utilize that platform in partnership with you all, to go through things that Sarah Ross went over, to talk more about, the Change Lab, et cetera, and or dive into some examples, at a national level, with a webinar or something like that. I mean, we would certainly be interested in talking about that, but I think there's other communication mechanisms to grab, but I think it's to what end? Is it to raise awareness? Is it, entice funders to support the advocacy work? I mean, it could be all of those things, but we would certainly be interested in helping out. But I guess what I wanted to say is I like the framing. I thought it was really nice. And I can see how you can mix it or cherry pick it or frame it, in certain ways, depending on precisely who the audience is. But at the end of the day, I mean, it should be about cost savings, or the benefits locally, whether people care more about cost savings or they equally care about, say, energy efficiency. You can frame that appropriately given the audience. But let me ask a question. I couldn't get my hand up fast enough when you called for them. Sarah. But I was curious on the financials. This probably exists, and forgive me if it exists in your all's material that I've probably looked at and have forgotten. But in terms of making the longer term case for the cost effectiveness of traditional versus say geothermal, I guess with and without federal tax credits, like because you're reaping a district would be reaping the savings, in the long term on the energy savings. But I'm just curious, are there examples out there of kind of modeling that from just a cost perspective, upfront cost versus the savings over a longer period of time?
So this kind of image that
I
I
mean,
showed beforehand. So yeah, it's really, every building is a snowflake. So when it comes to renovations, these numbers can look radically different. And then every market, markets have different features. So you'll notice there was a cluster of yellow stars in the upper Midwest and the Northeast. We use a whole lot of heating, so more efficient heating yields, huge benefits. And our electricity is really expensive. So when you can save and be more efficient there, it has a huge impact, in places where, like we're doing some work in Washington right now, and the economics are much tighter because electricity and gas are so cheap there, right? So these economics will, be affected by the cost of these various prevailing fuels. It will be affected by whether we are, um, what kind of climate zone this machine is going to operate in, and it's going to be affected by some of that renovation versus new construction case. So in Massachusetts, we did a study. Our school building authority was excited about this tax credit, and so they have created a new heat pump retrofit program. And so to figure out how, as a state agency, to set up the program, they did a study of 18 existing buildings in Massachusetts and hired an engineering firm, Salis O'Brien, to go and look and say, how much would it cost to retrofit these 18 buildings with air source, ground source with backup boiler, air source of various flavors? And what hit me over the head, the big headline of that is the pricing is all over the place. It's anywhere from $20 a square foot to $200 a square foot. Every building is a snowflake when it comes to a renovation. So those are some of the factors. But I will say, Jeff, we have, a slide like this for Connecticut. We have a slide like this for Maryland. We have a slide like this for Wisconsin. We have a slide like this for Washington. This pattern that you're seeing here on the slide is remarkably consistent across places. And even when people tell us it isn't, then we go look at the number, we're like, well, show us that it doesn't work. You're like, oh, but you didn't really do the policy and the tax credit isn't really in here. And oh, once you do that, wow, look at that. We're back to the same picture again. So yeah. But that's one of the things that we are constantly on the hunt for is those artifacts where we can show that math and show that math is being represented well. I'll stop talking and ask Craig what he wants to talk about.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, Sarah, but the school districts do need that higher budget first, and then they get the money back in the tax credit. So I'm curious,
Yes.
okay, from your perspective and from the budgeting from school districts, what is that dynamic like? They
Yeah.
budget for
Yeah.
this much, and then they get, yeah, what do they do with the savings? How do they get that extra money? Yeah.
Yeah. So I think one thing we try and do is help people, make a decision about what the like understand the financial implications of different HVAC choices as one exercise. And then, as a separate exercise, understand how they're going to pay for it and how that cash flow can work.
Okay.
And very often, the cash flow can pollute the what makes the most sense financially, right? And this thing about, oh, but it's reimbursement gets into story. So when we talk to the non-finance people, they're all very worried about this cash flow issue. And then when you go talk to the finance people, they're like, we move money around all the time. This is what we do.
Okay.
They just got to ask us to do our job, right?
Okay.
Now, this story is a little bit different for new construction. Very often these school districts are going out and so they're bonding for $100 million, right? Or you're Salt Lake City and you've got a $700 million bond that you're rolling through multiple projects. When you're out in the bond market, this just becomes, another part of managing a big pot of money over time. And this tax credit can be incorporated and gets, fills up the next bucket and you move into the next project and your finance people are going to manage that cash flow. It is much more of an issue, this reimbursement, when you're not going out to the bond market to build a new building and you don't have $100 million and you have a capital budget of 2 million to fix a thing, not 4 million. So even though you're going to get 2 million back, you only have 2 million to start with. So it's much more of an issue we find in the one-off retrofits in smaller districts where they don't have access to this like large bonding capacity. And so that's the role that this heat pump retrofit program in Massachusetts is helping to fill, is they're giving grants explicitly for retrofits. And that's a kind of program we would love to replicate across other states that are motivated to do the same. Every school remembers Snowflake. Other thoughts, questions, thoughts
Sarah,
about
do you
partnerships?
have, this is Phoebe, with Center for Green Schools. You guys present at a lot of conferences around the country and in partnership with CMTA and others. Do you all have like a list of places you plan to present this year on like these topics? It'd be interesting to see if like there's interest or need for us like as a community to do more of like a roadshow on this and like a train the trainer. Like I often defer to you all to like lead this conversation in conferences, but you know, like there's plenty of opportunity in Massachusetts for you and I to like divide and conquer more deliberately.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious if there's a way for this group to be more strategic about where we're showing up and what like delivering the same sort of consistent message with case examples.
Yeah. I love that idea because flying is no fun and
Right.
can't be in 100 places, and you are in a bunch of places too. So we're totally up to like support you all, slides, whatever, examples from the states that you're going to be in, because those local examples, like happy to do that. So maybe we can share our list of conferences that we're going to. I think Kristen's probably up next at the Midwest Climate Collaborative at the end of March, beginning of April. So she'll be talking about heat pumps soon. But yeah, let's share a list with you all, and then totally happy to have you all raise your hand and say, I want some help presenting. I see an opportunity, or do you have a private sector partner or a school, leader that you would recommend that I bring along? Because that's, some of what we can do pretty easily is point out the folks that would be good storytellers, good pairs, good sources of in-state information.
Yeah. And as a follow-up, is there a specific audience that you found is like most needed to be educated to? Is it the CFOs, is it superintendents, facility? Like who have you found? And maybe it's everyone's a snowflake, right? Like it depends on the leadership, right? The leadership are snowflakes too, not just the buildings. Yeah. I don't know if you had thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think the business officers have been really a really effective set of champions for us. And I remember sitting with a bunch of large district CFOs and it kind of, seeing the wheels turn and one of the CFOs looking around at, his peers in the room going, hey guys, you know what this means? We're going to have to like go back and push our facilities leaders on this because those guys like to keep doing the same thing that they've always done, and we're going to need to push them given the economics of what we're seeing here. And so yes, I do think the story about operating savings is just catnip to a CFO. So I think those have been particularly effective. And thanks to Elika, we've gotten to talk to a good number of those folks. But I think really anyone who's motivated and wants to has juice on this issue can be effective, whether it's students, teachers, parents, school members, and Ted wants to jump in.
Oh, no. Finish up your thought.
I think that's my thought with Elika's show them the money. Yeah.
Maybe Ted, real quick, maybe just kind of building on Sarah's thought on this, just this idea of a coordinated kind of awareness campaign related to like the in-person conferences that we could every state has a school business officers or a superintendents or a school board members, the facilities plant managers, conferences, and seeing how many of those kinds of things collectively we could bring this to, I think is a great idea. And we could kind of take that as a next step to try to hold that for the group. I think another way that we can think about this awareness building is through virtual experiences. So Anissa, I don't know if you're still on the call, but we were talking yesterday about like the Center for Green Schools Sustainability Directors Network or some of the USGBC networks, and maybe collaborating on some awareness building, virtual experience around both like the tax credits, energy tax credits more broadly around all of the technologies and what happened, because it's not just about sort of the geo question. It's also like just helping folks understand that there are still tax credits, that this opportunity still exists. It didn't all go away. We've had a similar conversation with doing something with AFT and SMART for some of your leaders. I think I saw Marianne and Tiffany on the call. So like other kinds of, if there are other audiences that folks want to think about either joining in on those opportunities and co-producing some event, with us for different national audiences, or doing some targeted virtual experiences together for, geographically distributed folks, I think we would be up for that too in Q2 and 3 of this year. If folks have audiences in your networks that we could help you bring this to.
Anybody else want to respond to that? All right. Jonathan and Sarah, I just wanted to offer, like, if you guys want to have like a technical engineering discussion about where these geothermal systems are appropriate in retrofits and new constructions, I've got a lot of data on that, a lot of the past projects we have. And Aaron Jobson, as I told you, Jonathan is going to take that couple of the existing geothermal applications we have in the region and talk about how those are operating, the decision-making process. And I've got a bunch of those in like the Massachusetts area we could go pull to.
Great.
So
great. To be continued. I'll write that down. Awesome.
Sarah, Phoebe's got a question about maintenance costs for geothermal.
Sorry, I didn't mean to like drop this at the end of the call, but I just wanted to put it out there that that this is a factor that we've been getting. Brian Conrad, in particular, from Prince William. I think some of the communities, especially where electricity rates are skyrocketing, right? Like, but I was digging, and it was really hard to find like any reports on like estimated actual or estimated cost for maintenance, like annual cost.
it's a tough question because it's always compared to what, like existing package units or an existing central plant. Those are two different comparisons of maintenance costs. So we get that a lot. If they're managing a central plant with a cooling tower, there's going to be savings on geothermal. So if they're considering a new construction between package rooftop units and a geothermal system, it's a different type of maintenance regime for, I'd say, an elementary school than it is a high school or college campus. So those are the things to consider. Do you have maintenance staff to manage a central plant? Or
Yeah, these are existing systems. So like trying to budget, not necessarily part of the cost analysis to make the decision one way or the other, but once it's installed, like what should they be budgeting for?
Yeah, I mean, if you have a central plant with a cooling tower, you're going to have water savings, chemical savings, maintenance cost savings on that piece of equipment immediately. So compared to what we can talk about.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you all for joining today, for the questions, for the engagement, for accepting the premise of us kind of sharing a little bit about what we've been thinking about these last 6 months or so since the big beautiful bill. Appreciate all the engagement around continuing to collaborate, and we were thinking maybe sometime in May for another one of these calls. And so if you have ideas about things you'd like to see on the agenda or topics, happy to shape that with you all over the next couple months. But see you soon, and thank you so much.